Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Okay. Hi, guys. Welcome to another live version of She Knows Arsenal. They're usually live, so I don't know why I said live version. Anyways, smash the likes, get in the chat. Let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling and all that kind of stuff, because we're going to get into the mess because we have lots of things to talk about today, which is great. Loads of going on in the Arsenal. Loads of things are going on in the Arsenal sphere today. Good things, I don't know, amazing things. I don't know what we want to say. Like we just have to chat. So let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. And also, there is a poll going on now where you guys can let me know what you want to talk about first. Give you guys a little bit of what is it? Like a little bit of power in the show. You guys can let me know what you guys want to talk about first. I don't really care. I could talk about anything first. You guys know me. I don't care. But you guys can vote. Let me know what you want to talk about first, and we'll get all the way into it. So yeah, Blaze is asking me how I am. I am doing well. I've been working a lot. I've been having a good time. I went to go get my first Thai massage yesterday, and when I tell you that that was like a life-changing massage, because it was like it wasn't comfortable. Like it wasn't like your normal massage where you go in there and then they just like do the thing and then you're like relaxed and stuff. Like, no. Like she was like, when I first got in there, she was like, "Can I stand on your back?" And I was like, "Stand on my back? What do you mean?" And she was like, "Yeah, let me stand on your back." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Let's see." Like the minute that I said that, I kid you not, she switched on the freaking music and was standing on my back, genuinely standing on my back. Like, and I couldn't breathe, but I was like, ain't no way I'm gonna be in this little massage place screaming and yelling. I'm not gonna go out like that. I'm a G. I'm not about to scream and yell. So I'm just gonna like take this pain. And like when I tell you that the pain in certain like spots was like excruciatingly bad. Like I have a bad back, like newsflash, I'm old as fuck. So like for those of you guys who are not old yet, you guys will feel this, that like one of the first things that you feel is like back pain, you know? And so I told her to like focus on my back. I kid you not, when she put her elbow and raked it across my back like that, I wanted to scream. I wanted to scream. And she did it like 3 or 4 times on both sides. It was insane. Then she did this thing where she like got behind me, pulled my arms back like this, stuck her feet in my back and pushed forward. Woo! My back cracked so many times. It was like, I was like, damn. But after, I've never felt so good. I've never felt so good. I will be going weekly to that lady. She saved my life. She literally saved my life. Like, I feel so much better today. Like, all of my stress and tension and all that is out. But, like, if you guys have never done a like Thai massage, you guys should go do one, because like, yeah, it's not comfortable like the way like normal massages are, where they have the music and the oils and they're just like doing whatever. That she's gonna hurt you, but after you're gonna feel freaking amazing. So yeah, they got like all in the ankles and like all in my calves and stuff. I was like, man, if like this is freaking amazing. So yeah, like if you guys haven't done one, make sure you guys do one. Mr. Happy says, I can't believe we got to wait till Monday to watch us play. Yeah, Monday is a while, but it also gives certain players, I think, more time to be potentially available for that game. We're going to talk about that. Obviously, I'm going to check the poll in a second, but yeah, I'm gonna miss this over the weekend, but it is what it is. Social Join says, question is what FA Cup match to watch? I'll be so honest with you. As soon as we go out of domestic cups, I start giving a shit. I stop giving a shit immediately. Like, I literally do not care what happens. As long as our rivals, like our main rivals, don't win, I'm kind of like, whatever, So I'm really not interested in the FA Cup. I think Man United are playing today. Chelsea? are playing today, but I probably won't be tuning in unless you guys are like, "Ooh, Jess, like something has happened," and it's like a bad thing for them. I will tune in, but I, we're not in it, so it's inconsequential to my life now. I know that that sounds like very like, "Jess, you love football. Why aren't you watching?" It's just something about going out of the domestic cups makes me be like, "Fuck it. I'm not watching this shit," you know? Um, let's see. Dane is saying, "Big up Jess from Trinidad and Tobago. Big up to you as well." And like Dane is saying, make sure you guys smash the likes. It's a free way to support the channel. And we all love a freebie. Marco says, "Let's talk about it. All strikers, players back, Mudryk kidnap. We're going to get into the mess. Trust." Olu says, "Yep, back pain is no joke. If your back hurts, you're fucked." Like, I'm just saying, because like there's nothing can that you like do in life that doesn't involve your back, So it's like I breathe in and it's like just pain because like I feel like it's like all down like this part of my back because like I'm tense on that side. That's how I like hold things and like I'm like, tense or whatever. Arsenal, probably Arsenal's fault in some way, shape, or form. No, I walk weird. I walk like with my back kind of like twisted to the side and it hurts and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you have back pain, like I do suggest going to the Thai massage because I feel like a million times better today, like a million times. Um, Let's see. Social Joins says always get a rough massage, feels better the next day. Agreed. Kevin says, and people underrate Thai massages and chiropractors. This is OG advertising for sure. I mean, I'm more focused on what I'm gonna feel like after, not what I feel like during. Because I feel like some massages are just like almost like just like they're just rubbing your back, and it's like, no, I need you to like get in there. And so it was definitely worth it. Mafia Boss says, "Big up Jess, big up to you as well." Nico says, "Big up Jess as well, big up to you as well. Thank you guys for showing up." And so we are going to look at the poll and see what you guys want to talk about first and get into the mess. So um, four-man striker shortlist is running away with it at 41%, fully fit squad at 27, and Mudryk cries at 32. So we'll start off with the four-man striker shortlist and get into that and talk about that for a while. Just to let you guys know, get comfy because this is going to be a long live. Like it is like I'm feeling it. Like we can go for at least like an hour and 30. So get a snack, get a drink. This is going to be probably longer than usual. And smash the likes and all that kind of stuff. So four-man short list for strikers. It's so funny. I find it funny that it was just a couple of days ago where I told you guys that I would be looking at I'd be looking at Victor Gyökeres, and people were, "Oh no, he's from the Portuguese league. He's from this. He's from that." And I'm just like, I don't know, guys. He looks like maybe like a serious striker. Maybe that's somebody that Arsenal should be looking at. And lo and behold, like maybe a day or a half after that, Arsenal are linked with the guy. So I'll give you guys the main information first is that Sammy McBell says that Arsenal, he said several things. He said Arsenal will go for a winger to cover Martinelli and Saka, also look for a midfielder, and Zubimendi's top of that list, and that Arsenal will move for a central striker this summer with Ivan Toney, Victor Osimhen, Joshua Zirkzee, and Victor Gyökeres among the Gunners, among the players that the Gunners have looked at. People said it was crazy. I'm not crazy. Because when a player has, 30 goals or something already this season, 32 goals or something like that, whether they're in the Premier League or a top 5 league or not, you kind of have to look over there and say, can this person be the guy for us? Because again, what we're looking for, or what I feel like Arsenal should be looking for, is someone who's going to bag goals. 20, 25, 30 goals a season. I know 30 goals sounds like a lot, but in all competitions, if you have the right guy, it could happen. So we're looking for somebody that can score loads of goals, that is somebody that can fit well within the system. So the system is very important. You want somebody that can do a little bit of the playmakery shit. I don't think you need to get somebody that's a false nine, but I feel like Kai Havertz has provided a very clear template for what we need, because he's not too much false nine and he's not too much traditional number nine. Like, he does a little bit of the link up play, but not as much as Gabriel Jesus. And he gets into goal scoring positions. Now, he's not clinical, but if you think about some of the chances that Kai Havertz misses at when he's at center forward, if you had a bagsman up there, like, probably would have scored 10 goals by now. So I do think that, like, he provides a very solid template for what Arsenal need. Not a false nine, not quite a traditional number nine, but something in between. That and somebody also with the physical stature, some physical quality that stands out. So I'm totally ruling out anybody that's like 5'9". So you're Joshua Davids, you're these guys. It's like we already have that. We have Eddie and Nketiah and freaking Jesus, and both of them are like 5'9", 5'10". You don't really need another one of those. I'd prefer somebody that's 6 foot and taller, and not just about the height, has a physical out, like an outstanding physical quality, whether that's being able to use their body, physicality, whatever, to occupy center backs, or somebody with raw and frightening pace, if not both. And so you guys can let me know what you think about that. But I think it's very obvious that Arsenal want to bring in a striker this summer. I know some people are like, well, how do you know? I'm like, I don't know for sure, but I just cannot imagine Arsenal going into another window and not addressing a very obvious situation when Gabriel Jesus has to have his knee drained before games. It's not even about Gabriel Jesus not being a natural goal scorer anymore. It's genuinely that he cannot play a lot of games. It's his second season, and the first season he played maybe about 4 complete months. This season he's played maybe 1 or 2, if we're being kind. So we're not in a situation anymore where I think like it's bring in somebody that could just do something different than Gabriel Jesus. It's about somebody taking over the reins, you know? And that might sound like very like dismissive of Gabriel Jesus, but you guys know how I feel about players that are not available. I really won't go into it again, but we just need to find somebody that's going to be the guy for us. That's where I feel like we are, to complete the project. Some people are saying it's the left center mid or the striker. I genuinely feel like it's a striker, because the way that we play, even in midfield, even though sometimes it's like maybe we could have used Jorginho or Kai Havertz, whatever, we could have switched it up. Genuinely, like the way our midfield functions, we are dominant in like 95% of the games, but there are going to be games towards like the end of the season where I do feel like if for some reason a team is able to stop us and we only have 1 or 2 chances, we have got to have somebody in there that's going to put it away. You have to. And so this is a very exciting signing for Arsenal, because we haven't had like a standout striker since Aubameyang, and Aubameyang signed in 2017. Now he stayed for quite a few years, but it's been a while since we've had somebody of this level. And so I'm excited to see what direction Arsenal go in. Now, all of the strikers that were named, Ivan Toney, Victor Osimhen, Gyökeres, and Xerxes are all, to me, very different. So that's the one thing that kind of is like, I know Arsenal are pretty flexible in the market. Like, we could go after somebody like Mudryk and end up with somebody like Trossard, and it still work out for us because of just the way that Arteta coaches. But I have a personal preference to what kind of striker we should be getting. And so I'm interested to know what you guys think as well, because we're Arsenal fans. If we have anything, we have fucking opinions, right? So get in the chat and let me know what you guys are thinking and feeling. But I wanted to show you guys this. I made this super quick just to make it a little bit easier to understand like what I'm saying, because like sometimes I cannot describe it properly. And so I have like a small tier list of like the strikers, and I'll talk you guys through it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strikers on here. Only 4 were listed, but just for the sake of arguments, just so I can make it a little bit clearer, this is kind of how I would rank the striker options based on, what Arsenal need. I think star quality is important, mentality Those types of things are really important. Physical attributes, pace, power, strength, the ability to pin back center backs and also run beyond them. Clinical finisher, somebody that has the ability to score 20-25 goals a season without penalties. Those types of things. And probably somebody that you believe can play for a top team, like somebody that has like that aura about them. I know that is like, aura, what the fuck are you talking about? But we all know what aura is. Thierry Henry had it. He wasn't just a phenomenal talent. He had the audacity to make that shit happen, so something like that. And so top of the list would probably end up being Osimhen because I feel like he hits the majority of those points. He is more of a traditional number 9 than a playmaker, but that's okay because we have Jesus. Like, if you have Gabriel Jesus and players like Saka and Odegaard in your team, the need for a striker to play make is very like down on the bottom of the list. You definitely don't want somebody with Timberland touch. You don't want Lukaku, but like basic link up is all you fucking need. I think people are getting a little carried away with they need to be able to do the Jesus-y shit. No, Kai Havertz is not doing Jesus-y things. He's not. He genuinely is not doing Jesus-y things. He is occupying center backs and doing the bare minimum when it comes to link up play. Bare minimum. And we look great. So I feel like somebody like Osimhen that can run beyond, that can occupy center backs, that's a traditional number 9, do basic link-up play, and has the audacity and the mentality to play for a top team, automatically goes to the top of the tree. Now, my caveat is he's a sick note, and a sick note is always going to piss me the fuck off. If you buy Osimhen, just know he's going to be out. He's going to be out. So there's that. But just on sheer ability and what I've seen with my own 2 freaking eyes, Osimhen fits the bill perfectly. And no, I'm not talking fee because I don't care about the fee. I'll keep it all the way funky with you guys. I'll take this down real quick so I can actually look at you guys in the face. I don't care about the fee. I don't, because we have not invested up top. We haven't invested in the striker position. We haven't really invested up front. So I'm expecting the majority of the budget to go up there and then trickle backwards. So I don't care that Osimhen has a £100 million release clause. I don't, because I expect us to be able to get it done. Now, Ben Jacobs said that anybody that's going to buy Osimhen is probably going to negotiate around the release clause. And I feel like some people still feel like if there's a release clause, you have to pay it. And that's only if the club that is the selling club doesn't offer you another option. A lot of clubs will offer that. A release clause is like a guarantee you're going to get this amount or around this. Like, you're not going to play us. Like, we are getting around 100 million for Osimhen, whether it's release clause or staggered payments. Now, if you do staggered payments, like you guys I've lived a life, right? You know that when you stagger payments, you end up having to pay more, right? So maybe it's 120 million, but staggered over 5, 6, 7 years rather than an upfront payment of 100 million, right? And so that's what it'll take to get Osimhen, and that's also how we're paying for Declan Rice. It's not that big of a deal, So release clause, I don't give a shit. I expect Arsenal to spend at least 80 million on the striker. I just don't feel like we're going to get away with like a 50 million pound steal. Like, whoever we're going to get, like, I expect that. And I don't care because sometimes you got to pay for good shit, So I'm not really caring about the price, period, So Osimhen, just based on like pure vibes of watching him and his qualities and things like that. Oh, the background's not right. Let's do this. That's the right background. So I would say he would be top of the list. Now, striker 2A and 2B are strikers that I would take, but are so different that it's like, okay, so pick your poison. Gyökeres and Vlahovic are more of your traditional number 9s. They can do a little bit of playmaking, but they are bagsmen. They are bagsmen. They are going to be in the box. They are good strikers of the ball. They are the types of strikers that remind me of like old Harry Kane, like that. Like, not the one that drops in deep now and does a lot of fucking playmaking. The one from back in the day that used to just kind of like be in the box, finish off moves, was very, very good ball striker, took penalties, free kicks, all that shit. that is what you're getting from those two. What you get from 2B, Xerxes and Isak are players that are going to run the channels. They're going to run the channels. They're going to run the channels. They have frightening pace. They're probably not going to score as many goals as the other ones, but they have goal scoring. Like they're going to score 10 to 15 goals a season, maybe. And they're more of, I feel like, aesthetically pleasing to like the typical Arsenal fan. A typical Arsenal fan is going to always prefer the Xerxes and the Isaks over the Vlahoviches and the Gyökereses, because quite frankly, Vlahovic and Gyökeres they don't have the flair, they don't look the way, but Xerxes and Isak have that flair, have that thing that we love as Arsenal fans because we love aesthetics, right? So maybe less goals, but more of the fun value from 2B. But 2A is probably the better goal scorer, but going to do less playmaking, if that makes sense. Then you have striker 3, Tony. I don't know what you guys see in him. I don't know what Arsenal see in him. I think it's an opportunity to buy somebody with 1 year left on his deal that's English, that has some good qualities, but definitely doesn't strike me as a star man, doesn't give me any vibes, nothing, so he's striker 3. So that's kind of how I've broken it down. Now you guys can let me know, are you guys more of like a 2A or a 2B? Do you want somebody that runs the channels? Do you want somebody that is more of like an aesthetically pleasing player, probably not going to score the 10, 15 goals, or not going to score more than 10, 15 goals a season, but is going to give you the vibes and do a little bit more of the playmaking? Or do you want 2A, more of like the traditional number 9 bagsman? Or you like go all out on Osimhen? You guys can let me know. But I broke it down that way because when I freaking like talk to you guys about it, it's hard for me to like say it without like a visual. So that's my visual. Hopefully that makes more sense. But yeah, like Xerxes, Isak running the channels, Gyökeres, Vlahovic, probably not so much. Probably not going to run the channels as much. But it makes sense for like an Isak or Xerxes to run the channels and run it behind a little bit more, because I don't think they're as like, they're so fast that like not utilizing their pace would be stupid, so they're very fast. And that's cool. Keenan says, we need a starting striker that we know can get the job done. Our fan base are shitting on Watkins and Tony, but they both get goals in the Prem. I don't know if it's necessarily shitting on them. Like, I feel like the whole idea about getting Prem proven because we're so afraid it's not going to work out is a cop out. Like, if you have good scouting, like, and the club knows what they're doing in terms of recruitment, you can buy players from outside the Prem and get it right, so I think Prem proven can be a little bit of a crutch. I think you end up spending more. And Ollie Watkins is clear of Tony. I don't think they're in the same basket at all. I think Ollie Watkins actually would fit us a lot better because he's actually a goal scorer. He takes a lot more touches in the box, and he still gets more GA than Tony. Over the period that he's been in the Premier League, he's more proven than Tony. Tony has 1 season as a 20 goal per season striker, and half of those goals were penalties. So I would actually take Ollie Watkins over Tony. I just feel like maybe Ollie Watkins is a little bit shorter, maybe not as much of like a physical option, whatever. I think Arteta's obsessed with height as well, which I understand why, because since we've gotten bigger, we've gotten better, so I kind of understand that. I just personally don't feel like we have to go the Prem proven route all the time, because if you have good scouting, you could figure it out. And sometimes there's better value out there in the market, but the cop out is to go Prem proven all the time. But I hear what you're saying. I watch Tony, and it's not about, I don't see a player that's coming to the Emirates and improving us the way that some other people see. I don't see him being our star striker. I see us needing to spend more money to buy that guy in 3-4 years. He's not going to get much better from here. He's already 28. The games when since he's come back, he's scored goals, but he's looked flat. Hopefully, as he gets fitter, maybe that'll help. But everything that Tony does really well is outside of the box. He spends 90% of the time at the halfway line and or in the half spaces. He's always creating for other people. And for me, it's like, we have that already, and it's giving Lacazette. It really is. And I don't think we need Lacazette. But Ollie Watkins, I can kind of understand a little bit more, because he's actually like very much so a striker and a killer, so but Tony is not a striker and a killer. He is a playmaking striker, and he has good set pieces and dead balls, which is great, but there's just nothing about when I watch him that says he is going to take Arsenal to the next level. It's really giving like stopgap. So yeah. Viper says, I think Gyökeres would be a nice fit for us, but I also consider Jimenez 15 goals in his last 2 seasons at Feyenoord, and Sesko as well. I think the problem with Sesko is his age and the fact that it is going to end up being a project. I think the players here, when you look at the players that at least Arsenal are said to be looking at, they don't seem as raw as Sesko. But I think Sesko, if we had time for a project, would be perfect. I just don't know if we do. But Jimenez, when I watch him, I don't get the feeling, but he's also looks like a good option for somebody. Like, I think Jimenez is going to end up in the Premier League. We'll just see who takes the risk. I just don't think it'll be Arsenal. EK says if Xerxes or Sesko become more prolific, they will frighten defenses. I just don't see that with Gyökeres, Vlahovic, or Tony. I guess maybe because the pace and behind would make them more of a scary threat. I think having somebody that runs the channels and can scare center backs and have them going in the other direction is very useful. And it's something that we don't really have in abundance. So I can understand that aspect of things. Like, you want, if they could become the 20 goal per season strikers, they would have the Haaland effect. Because one of the scariest things about Haaland is that when he runs in behind, he's virtually unstoppable. So I can see that aspect of things. Gyökeres, Vlahovic, these guys, Tony, they're not going to give you the pace in behind. And so that is like a ding against them for sure. C. Wilder says, getting Isak also weakens rival-ish. Agreed. He's just a sick note as well. I just wonder how many games he would get through before, we're like, fuck, we really did buy another injury prone guy. Like, but Isak is like, he fits the eye test of what Arsenal fans, a lot of like, of the arson babies love, people that are the Wenger babies of the fan base. I can see what they see in Isak because aesthetically, he just reminds them of Thierry Henry. The problem with Isak is that even though what he does on the ball maybe reminds you of Thierry Henry, he's not available enough, and he's also just not as clinical, as aesthetically pleasing as Henry could be on the ball. He was a fucking like menace in front of goal. He got the job done, and I'm not sure that Isak necessarily has that. So we're talking about like Isak potentially becoming prolific, Xerxes becoming prolific. I'm afraid that these players are who they are. That scares me, that they are the 10 to 15 goal per season guys that look great on the ball, but aren't going to give us that real bagsman feel. It's all about an educated risk. Everything has a level of risk to it. Even Osimhen has a genuine risk that what if, what he's doing in Serie A doesn't necessarily translate? I think it will, but there's a chance that it won't. What if he is too injury prone? So everything has a risk. It just depends on which risk you can absorb the best. Can Arsenal absorb a player that is injury prone? Can we absorb that? If they can only play 20 games a season, can the other 18 games plus be filled in from someone else? That's something that I think Arsenal have to look at. The guy says, I'd sell Gabriel Jesus. Trossard could be false nine. I would not sell Gabriel Jesus. Not yet anyway, but I can see people feeling that way because when people are unavailable for so long, or I know a lot of people weren't even on board with the Jesus signing at first because he was damaged goods from Man City, and he also was not a prolific goal scorer. Like, the narrative around Gabriel Jesus, especially from rivals, is that he's not really a striker. So I think a lot of people had reservations about him, which he's kind of proven to be true. Now you add the knee problem onto it, and I can understand why people are like, just cash in, so I get that. Says Osimhen worries me on how Serie A strikers translate to the Premier League. You look at somebody like Scamacca that looked like amazing in that league and could not hack it at West Ham, and went back and started looking good again, So, but everybody outside of the Premier League, I feel like has that adaptation question around them. Gyökeres would have that, Osimhen would have that, Xerxes would have that. Like, you just never know if they're gonna do it or not, But you look at somebody like Hoyland, who was clearly a very talented striker, young striker, that only scored like 7 goals in Serie A and was basically like a rotational option. Like, he wasn't even like a true starter at Atalanta. Took maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 months to really get his feet underneath him, and now he can't stop scoring. So, I don't necessarily feel like having somebody that takes a little bit longer to adapt is necessarily like the worst thing, because from my perspective, I'd rather take that risk and somebody take 2, maybe 3 months to like really get going, not first goal ever, but really get going. But their potential and ceiling is really high, rather than somebody that just about lifts our floor, hits the ground running, but there's like a clear ceiling on that person. I'd rather go for the slow burner than like, you know, that person like a Tony, who we know is gonna not have a problem in English football, but I feel like there's a clear ceiling on Tony. So yeah, it just depends. Let's see. Winning Way says, I don't think you have to be fast, but the strikers need to be clinical and handle the physicality. Harry Kane, Tony Aguero wasn't fast at all. It depends. Like, some people do not value pace as much as others. I do value pace, but I agree with you. I don't think it's the end all be all. There's trade-offs, So the people that we have on here that have the pace aren't necessarily clinical, but the players without it are probably more clinical. So, if you're losing the pace, but you get a clinical striker in return, I do think you can stomach that, especially if you bring in a pacey winger. The truth is Arsenal need to bring in another pacey player, whether that is in the form of a winger or a striker. To me, it's not really like it has to be the striker, but what they cannot do is go through this next transfer window and not bring in a single player with speed. They have to. We just don't have enough of it. And so, yeah, like it just depends, but I agree with you. I don't think pace is the end all be all, but if you don't have the pace, your ass needs to be clinical. You have to. You have to. Like, you have to be a real bagsman. You can't bring in somebody that's slow and also doesn't score a lot of goals, you know? So there's definitely that. Make sure you guys are smashing the likes. We're going to talk about this for a little bit longer. JC says a lot of Arsenal fans are in love with the idea of players like Xerxes and Sesko. I think they're in love with the potential of players like that. Everybody looks good on their comps, right? If you don't watch players 99% of, like, you don't watch them like fully, in matches, and you only watch their YouTube comps and look at stats or whatever, you can get glamorized by like the potential of a player. And I think Sesko and Xerxes have amazing potential to be like special players. Just by looking at their comps, you can tell. It's just whether or not you believe that they can become that. Personally, I think Sesko is going to be special. Xerxes, I'm not so sure on, but like I could be totally wrong because I'm just fucking guessing. So it's up to the club to make an educated risk, like take an educated risk on somebody. And if they go for the projected star, then it's a really big risk, but it could end up like having like great rewards as well. So it's all about them knowing what they're looking for. How can they project how the future is going to go for a player? Only they would know how to do that. I'm just, a YouTuber, so I'm just looking at it could turn out that Tony is the best thing that ever happened to this club. And I'm just talking nonsense. I don't think I am, but it's up to the club to figure that out. Live says Gyökeres would explode at Arsenal and Premier League experience. Winning West says, don't be fooled by the highlights. Sesko is quiet when he plays big teams. Their best player is Xavi Simons. But I mean, a 20-year-old being quiet against the better teams doesn't necessarily say that he's not going to become a fantastic player. I feel like he's only 20 and this is his first year in the Bundesliga. Maybe first or second. Is it his first or second? I think it's his first. Let's see. Like, he's 20. So the idea that like you're not worth the risk if you're not scoring against Real Madrid at this stage in your career is a little bit like trying to make something out of nothing. So let's see. Yeah, this is his first season in the Bundesliga, and he has 7 goals in 20 matches. So, I feel like he definitely is a potential argument. Like, his whole thing is about potential, and can you project him to be something like our version of Holland, you know? But the idea that because he's didn't score against Bayern or he didn't score against Real Madrid means that, Arsenal should not get him is not a good enough reason. I can understand more if he was more experienced, but he's not, so he's 20. 20 is like barely alive. Like, do you know what I mean? In like footballing terms, so I would give him a little bit more leeway on that, if I'm honest, Um, let's see. Boy says Gyökeres and Xerxes, the only signings that make sense right now. I wonder like how those are they're so different that I would love to know why you feel about that or why you feel that way. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like they're so different. So why are they the only signings that make sense? Xerxes, he's at Bologna right now doing a good job. I think he's like what 7 goals or something like that. Let's see. But then you have somebody like Gyökeres that's just freaking killing it, so I would love to know why you feel that way. Xerxes is 22, and he has 9 goals and 3 assists, so it'd be interesting to know, why you feel that way. Justin J says, "Tony is a poor man's Lacazette post BBL." That's fucking hilarious. And I agree. Anyway, says Watkins doesn't get enough credit. He's a better striker than Jesus and Havertz in our system. For me, he gets 20 goals. I mean, being a more clinical striker than Jesus and Havertz isn't really like that deep, but I kind of get what you're saying. 20 goal, he does. I think he would get a lot of goals for us. I just am not sure that like I don't know. That's at Aston Villa. Are we sure it's gonna translate to Arsenal? Because that's another thing about people that are in the Premier League. Can they replicate what they do at a smaller club at Arsenal? Some people get stage fright. I don't know if he would get stage fright. That's just an argument. If I had an argument against Ollie Watkins, it would be can he do it at Arsenal? Or is it because he's at a small place and maybe he is a big fish in a small pond? He is somebody that has to play at a smaller club to make it work, or is he somebody that you genuinely feel can come to Arsenal and be the guy? Because again, we're looking for the guy, not just somebody to fill a role for 5 minutes. Would you feel confident going into next season with Gabriel Jesus and Ollie Watkins as your 2 options? He also doesn't add to like the height or the physicality despite being like a very good poacher, so interesting conversations around Ollie Watkins, but he is experienced. He's 28 years old. He's been around the block for a while. So he's not somebody that would be considered a project. So I can see why people would be interested in him. Tony says, I don't see Emery wanting his best striker going to Arsenal. I mean, is that his decision? Does Emery have so much clout and so much like control at Aston Villa where he can just say like, well, Arsenal are offering like, let's say 60 million for Ollie Watkins. We're going to turn it down because you used to be Arsenal's manager. I'm not sure that would come into play. I'm sure that what it would be more is that maybe they don't feel like they can replace him. So if they don't feel like they can replace him, he'll be off limits. But the idea that Aston Villa will not sell their players is kind of like they will. Aston Villa will sell their players. So let's see. But I will not want Ollie Watkins. He's not for me. Personally. Um, let's see. Melbourne says Gyökeres has 40 GA. Openda would be food as well. Yeah, I mean, you always have to put the tax on the Premier League as well, but even if you took away half of that, he's still having a fantastic season. So, well, you just watch him. Just watch him. Just watch him, you guys. Like genuinely, if you have a moment to watch Sporting play, just watch him. Like he really does pass the eye test. Like I'm not just saying it because of the stats. Like look at the player and then I looked at the stats. I'm like, the stats really line up well in terms of what kind of player he is. Like he creates his own shots. He creates things for other people. He scores loads of goals. He takes penalties. He links up play well. All of those things are there. And then, oh, by the way, he's scoring at a freakishly high level. So I wouldn't just say him because of the stats. I'm definitely saying it as well because, in the couple of games that I have looked at, I'm like, oh, he actually really looks very good. So yeah, but also, Arsenal scouts have been watching like Sporting play. They could be looking at Diomande, but they could also be looking at Gyökeres. So hopefully it's both, but I don't think we'll get both from one team if that makes sense. But yeah, I get you. I get you guys. I get you guys. Let's see what else you guys are saying. We're going to close out this conversation soon. So make sure you guys get me all of your thoughts and feelings on the striker before we move on to, we're going to move on to Mudryk crying next. Mr. Happy says, where have all the top strikers gone? It's so annoying. I mean, we're definitely not in the era of like Suarez and, Ibrahimovic and like they're being top strikers all over the place. Cavani, like we're not really in that era anymore where like people are just like, I don't know what kids want to be now, but maybe they don't want to be strikers, or maybe the way that academies are going about it, it's like they're creating system players instead of like those like main character strikers that were like seem to be in abundance before, but it feels like the number 9 is back in style. So some of these guys that we're talking about now are probably going to be the template for the next group that comes through. I do think number 9s are coming back in fashion. I think they are in fashion now, so they'll be back. Everything works in cycles. Everything works in cycles. Social Join says Gyökeres is well-rounded, strong enough, quick enough. He plays up top alone. His finishing is serious. That's what I've seen, but I can also see why people are not feeling it because he's not in the Premier League, but if we had to just choose from the Premier League, I'd just say, fuck it, don't choose anybody because the options in the Premier League don't move me either, Marco says Osimhen for me. Keenan says Gyökeres is scoring off of a bunch of defensive errors at Sporting. I like a striker that creates their own goals. He does create his own goals, though. He does. Like, if you look at his stats for shot creating actions, he's in like, he has to be like in the 99th percentile or something like that, because I looked at that. So all of his goals are not coming just from mistakes. A lot of them do come from mistakes, but his shot creating actions are in the 98th percentile. So, yeah, player compared to positional peers in the men's next 14 compositions. So yeah, this is against like everyone, so I kind of get what you're saying, but I mean, this would only really ring true for me if his shot creating actions were really low, but he's in 98th percentile. So it's not just off of rebounds and stuff like that. He genuinely does create his own opportunities, and it's not just, mistakes. So yeah, Marco says it looked like they turned into wingers. Boy says top strikers were coached out of the game. The Arsenal perspective says Mudryk cry more, my guy, cry more. We're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about it. We're getting into it. C. Wilder says it's still Osimhen for me, but I'd like someone else to rise because I think Osimhen is a bit of a twat. A bit of a twat. So yeah. But yeah, just today saying Chelsea's human trafficking young children. I see we need to talk about it. So there's 174 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because we're going to talk about Mudryk really quick because it's freaking hilarious. And here's the thing, guys, like I had an epic meltdown when we didn't get Mudryk. But at the same time, like, here's the thing. My main feeling on like the whole, Mudryk saga was I was just disappointed that we didn't go like that further mile to get the player that Arteta truly wanted. And my general rule about things too is that I don't necessarily feel as though like if a player goes to another team and flops, that means that they would have flopped at your club, because we have to make sure that we remember that environment is so important. And so like if you go to Manchester United or Chelsea and flop, I'm not 100% sure that you are just a terrible player, because they're very like everything there is very volatile. It's very ever changing. The floor is shifting out from beneath you. And so like I believe if Caicedo had went to Liverpool, he'd be a much better player. He'd be playing under a better manager, under a better system, with better players, So I always want to keep that in mind. Now, do I feel like that means that Mudryk would not have been as raw as he is? No, he's definitely a raw player, but he would have been playing behind Martinelli, at least for in the beginning. And he would have been being coached by Mikel Arteta and not Fat Frappuccino, So it's an interesting one. But this tweet came out from, I think this came from like Gunner Blog talking about it maybe, but let's see. Edu and Arteta were utterly convinced of Mykhailo Mudryk's talent when the deal did not materialize. Arsenal's understanding was that the player was devastated. Now, I say this all the time that, there's Arsenal fans that just believe their own reality, that because we did not get Mudryk, that meant we did not want Mudryk. And it's like, no, they genuinely wanted him, you guys. Like, be serious. We chased him for 2 windows. The first window that we looked at him, we couldn't get him. And then the window that he became available in January, Arsenal were desperate to get him. The problem was that they wanted an insane amount of money because Chelsea came in and they decided that they were willing to spend over the odds like they have with every single one of their players in order to get them, right? To make a statement, So Arsenal did want Mudryk. I don't know why we feel like if we don't get a player, that means that we didn't want them. I think it's a defense mechanism. We just didn't put up the money required. And I also feel like there was an element of we want to sell him to this club for other reasons, right? But Edu and Arteta were convinced of Mykhailo Mudryk's talent. When the deal did not materialize, Arsenal's understanding was that the player was devastated. Now, this is where Chelsea fans are, basically trying to say that it's all made up. But I don't know how they could believe that Mudryk was not devastated. He was twerking hard, like hard. Like, I've never seen a player twerk that hard to come to a club. He had spoken to Arteta. He had spoken to Edu. He was speaking to Zinchenko. He went on Ukrainian TV and spoke about his Arsenal move before it even materialized for real. So the idea was that he was basically an Arsenal player. And at that time, Arsenal are one of the best and still is one of the best young projects that you could possibly join. And then you have Chelsea, who are going through hell and are still going through hell. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he was desperate to come to Arsenal and a little bit like, I don't know if I really want to go to that place, because like you don't look good right now. Like Mudryk he's like what, 20, 21, 22 years old. He doesn't really, I think, have like an affinity towards the club's history. He wants to go where shit sounds fun and there's a whole bunch of other young players there and it's going well. And oh, by the way, his like international captain is there as well. So it made him easier for him to adapt to the place that he was going. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he wanted to come to Arsenal over Chelsea. This is not like 5, 6, 7 years ago, So, and we know football changes quickly. So, like, yes, you've been like a force for a long time, but, we also saw that very quickly Chelsea became a very, like a very popular place to go, despite Arsenal being way more, successful than Chelsea in like the early 2000s. We remember that shift from like the early 2000s to the 2010s, that all of a sudden Chelsea was the place to be. And Arsenal was like kind of, it happens quickly. It could happen like in 3-4 years. And I'm not saying that like every single player is desperate to come to Arsenal, but what I am saying is that Mudryk was twerking, didn't get his move, and Caicedo was also twerking in that same January window to come to Arsenal. He stopped going to practice. They had to isolate him from like the rest of the club to stop the nonsense from happening. So Arsenal is a place that players really want to go. And I don't know what Arteta tells these kids, but they get very hell-bent on wanting to come, So, and we've seen it over multiple windows now, but Mudryk still has admirers at Arsenal who believe his talent can still be unlocked. That is coming from Gunner Blog. And so, and Team News and Ticks also is a part of this conversation through The Athletic. And he said, assuming it's a he, that Arsenal's understanding that the player was devastated when someone calls you in tears as they are on the way to the airport in tears saying, can't you do something? I want to play for you. I probably understand they were devastated too. And Team News and Ticks doesn't really have any reason to say that now. And you know, I get that you don't want to believe that a player would come to your club but be like devastated that they're coming to you. But let's be serious. That saga was so insane that I believe that this happened. Maybe not. I believe he was devastated. Whether he was in the car crying and calling Arteta, I don't know. But do I believe he was devastated? Absolutely. He wanted to come to Arsenal. And for people that are like, you know, how could he be forced to go to a certain club? Because the options that were given to him were either you go to Chelsea or you stay here. And that's it. Once Shakhtar said that they weren't going to accept Arsenal's offer and that his only avenue to getting out of Shakhtar was to go to Chelsea, and your agent is telling you that, who's probably getting a hefty fucking cut, then yeah, as a young kid, you're probably just going to do it. We know young players, young kids are very, very impressionable and can be influenced into doing a lot of things. So, he was presented probably with an option to go or stay, and he chose to go, so um it's tough. I think that's a really tough one. At the moment, at the time that it was happening, it did not feel right the way that it happened. But Arsenal were not willing to pay the like 85 million that would have been required to bring in Mykhailo Mudryk. They were willing to pay less than that, but it was still a lot. Like Arsenal at that time probably were going to break their transfer record on Mykhailo Mudryk because it was over 70 million, which is what we paid for Pepe. So they were going to break their transfer record for Mykhailo Mudryk, which says to me that they really wanted him and, like they're already saying, believed in his talent. But my God, like this is why like it's so important to have the right people around you, because who knows what the ramifications for Mudryk's career will be being there, because we know that there's been many a young player, whether through the academy or been bought for heavy fees, that are at Chelsea, just their career just stagnates and they just like it's like they never flourish. And I don't know what it is about them that makes it that way, but I kind of felt bad for him. At the same time, I'm kind of indifferent as well, because like life moves on. We have plenty of targets to look at, and it is what it is. But my God, the fact that Chelsea fans are deluded enough to believe that like this cannot be possible. Look at this. Look at his face. Does he look fucking happy? Does he look like he wants to be there with y'all? Does he? Seriously. Seriously. Like, does this look like the face of a man that said, you know what? This is where I want to fucking be? No. So it's really sad, but you know, um Arsenal are the type of club where if they always believed in you, um they probably will go back in for you. We know that we never let targets go, and Chelsea will need to sell, and so I would not be surprised if this is something that was revisited in the future. But I feel like we could go with a fresh approach and go for the Neto or the Nico Williams or something like that, because you also know that when you get a player from Chelsea, they're often psychologically damaged. So yeah, but that was very interesting to me, because the amount of Chelsea fans that were deluding themselves into believing that Team News and Ticks just made it up when they know that he's incredibly reliable, and how things panned out, like, they actually deluded themselves into thinking that the only reason why, like, Mudryk was dying to come to Chelsea, and when they came into the frame, like, he jumped ship on Arsenal, like, that's definitely not what happened, and everybody knows that, and it doesn't matter how many articles and, how many payments that they make to whatever agents to spread their nonsense, we all know what happened. Just because you wanna pay more for a player doesn't mean that they're desperate to come to you. And if you're faced with, as somebody that's in a war-torn country, by the way, remember, like, Ukraine is we don't, like, a lot of us, we don't live there, so we don't really think about it on a daily basis. But at that point, like, you're in a war-torn country and you're faced with the option to either stay here or go. even if it's not the club that you wanted to go to, you are going because you're also going to triple your wages. You're going to be living in London. Like, as a 21-year-old with that on offer, you don't have the ability to say, I'm just going to wait and see if Arsenal come in the summer, you know? So it's a tough one. But I was surprised to see this information or this even being spoken about because we're so beyond this now. But that freaking saga, especially like as a YouTuber, you live the sagas that happen. So it's like you're constantly talking about it. I remember it step by step. And I got the feeling on the day that he signed for Chelsea that it was more politically driven. They gave him a choice of either we're not going to accept Arsenal's bid, so you either go to Chelsea or stay here. And he chose to go there. And it didn't have anything to do with being excited about their project because, mind you, their project was shit at the time and it still is. Because if you had the choice blindly to choose between Arsenal's project and Chelsea's, nobody in their right mind would have chose Chelsea's. Let's be serious, so it's just, and Arsenal do so much like groundwork and talking to the player through Zinchenko. Like, a lot of groundwork went into that. And so I'm not surprised that Arsenal were also pissed off at the way that things happened. And I don't think they were pissed off at Chelsea. I think they were mad at Shakhtar and in Mudryk's agents. So very interesting. Social Join says, question is, why did this news come out 1 year later, either Chelsea or Arsenal trying to see feedback? I don't know. It came from Gunner Blog, and I'm not quite sure why he wrote it, what the context around it is. But maybe it's I don't know why. It was just such a major thing that happened in the transfer window at that time. Like, the amount of articles that were fed through to different like major media outlets was insane. How Chelsea beat Arsenal and it's all carefully crafted by Bowley, Clear Lake, and the English media to create a PR campaign around Chelsea. And the problem is that when all of your PR is based around how much money you spend and the players that you buy and not about what you're doing on the pitch, you've really lost the plot, because winning the transfer window and spending more money than everybody doesn't equal being the best on the pitch. It just doesn't. And how Klopp and Liverpool have went about their business this season is like almost like the best explanation or the best example of it, because for them to have been quote unquote humiliated by Chelsea's Clear Lake coming in and taking both Lavia and Caicedo, but for them to beat them in a Carabao Cup with their fucking kids, and oh, by the way, be on their way to possibly a quadruple, is the best indicator of like, it's not about how much you spend, it's about how you spend it. Do you have the right characters? Are you doing the right things? And I feel like a lot of Chelsea fans, even though they won't admit it, they're coming around to the idea that like, this is not Roman and this may not work, because it's not just about a blank check from daddy. It's just not. So football is a very unforgiving business. It really, really is. And so you have to make a succession of very smart, calculated moves. Throwing money at it doesn't always work. This is not 2004, 2005. It's so different now, so very interesting. But Mudryk, to me, is a good player that I do feel like would be different at Arsenal, but I do feel like the ship has sailed and Arsenal have other options that we can look at in those wing positions. And it is what it is. RM says, but he could have stayed still. His preferred move in the summer, he simply saw the money and dipped, which is understandable, but don't now go back on your decision. It could be the money, but like, again, you have to like the fact that people are not remembering that like Ukraine or like a war-torn country right now also makes the decision a lot easier to just leave. I don't like just saying that players just only do things for money. As like a young player, like especially like people forget that a lot of these players come from very small backgrounds. Oh, he just scored. It's almost like he heard me. I feel like people don't understand that like a lot of these players come from like very like poor backgrounds too. And so you have your whole family on your back. So when you have your agent that has looking for a cut, your family is probably has their hand out. These decisions are very easy to go for more money. It's not just about like, I don't care about the game. Like, you actively have your entire family that you're feeding a lot of times, so I don't begrudge him for it. I really don't. So yeah, Super Kai says, I'm not surprised this news came out, as remember in the summer there were rumors of Chelsea wanting to swap for him for ESR just 6 months after him joining, but do agree the ship has sailed. I agree. Boy says, stay in Ukraine for a year while Russia invade. You get your London move next season. I genuinely don't think people understand like how easy that decision is make it how easy that decision is to make when you're Mudryk, when you're 21, when I don't know what his family is like, but often they have to pay for their family, or like they're supporting their family, and you're living in like a war-torn country. A very easy decision to make, even if you wanted to be at Arsenal. So yeah. But yeah, well done, Mudryk. You scored meaningless goal against Leeds, so have fun. Let's move on to Arsenal, because that's what I like to talk about. We need to talk about Arsenal getting players back. So there's 174 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let me just check Twitter really quick, make sure nothing is like happening. Oh shit. Spaces are now camera on if you like. What? Wow. Spaces you can now, wow. That's kind of insane. But that's kind of insane. I just saw that like your Twitter Spaces or X Spaces can now be video on. That's actually very interesting. So yeah, but let me just pull this up. Well, we got an inside training. Oh my gosh, Arsenal just posted that we have an inside training, and Jurrien Timber is back. And that's what we're going to talk about. So make sure you guys are smashing the likes, because this is the most important news that we're going through today. Oh, why is my computer dying? There. Okay. So, guys, guess who's back? Back again. Timber's back. Tell a friend. So I actually want to give a lot of credit to I want to give a lot of credit to Mo Arsenal 86. I'll show you guys his account just in case you guys are on Twitter and you guys don't follow him. I don't like in the nose. I hate them. But when they're getting things right on a consistent basis and it's not bullshit, like you have to give credit where credit is due. And I do feel like he's been very right on a lot of things lately in terms of like when players are coming back, what's going on. Like he called ESR starting against Sheffield before everybody else. And he actually said on February 12th that for the first time this season, Arsenal are expecting to have a fully fit squad by the end of this month per source. And we are literally at the very end of the month, and we are expecting a fully fit squad. So, which is like a very, very good thing for Arsenal. We've spoken about this so many times that it is incredibly important for Arsenal to get some of these guys back that have been gone for a long time. The Parteys, the Tomiyasus, Zinchenko, all this. And so Arsenal had training today. They actually trained inside the Emirates, which is great. And we saw a couple of faces that we haven't seen in a long time. So first and foremost, I do want to talk about Gabriel Jesus, because I don't know whether or not he's going to be able to take part against Sheffield, but I want to reiterate the fact that like he's having a very difficult time because he has to have his knee drained, and Arsenal are said to be really managing him from now until the end of the season so that he doesn't have any more setbacks. And I think that's really important. We have found ways to score without him. That doesn't mean that there's not a day and a time for him. I do feel like his role has been slightly minimized. And I just think that's the reality of having a player like Trossard in the team and Kai Havertz that offer, like, when your striker's main job, or, like when you play the way that Arsenal do, where the goals are spread around, it makes it a lot easier for other players to play in that position without you being so missed, and so I think that's why Trossard and Havertz have been so good, because it's like you don't necessarily have to be a clinical striker in order to play number 9 for Arsenal right now. But having Gabriel Jesus back in the fold is really important because, first of all, he's really good in Champions League. And I do think if we want to go far in the Champions League, he'll be important for that, because he's one of the only players beyond Havertz and Jorginho and Zinni that have any level of like real experience in the Champions League. So that is going to come up very important for us. So it's really nice to see him back. Also, this young man is back on the grass for us. Do you guys remember who this is, or do I need to remind you guys who this is? Timber is back. So let's also like just remember that like he's coming back from a long-term injury. So like, please, like, can we not have a meltdown when he's like not, playing against Sheffield on Monday? He's not going to play now, but he's back on the grass. And just as like just as a kind of like an example or like something to pull back on, is that from the moment that Viv and Williamson got back in training, like full training, it was like 42 days before they like started a match. So from here, it could probably still be until like end of March before we actually like see him in a team like really playing or whatever. So just keep that in mind. But it is nice to see him back in the fold, because it's just like I've never seen a player play like 5 minutes for Arsenal and be loved more, be loved more. It's insane. But he understands what it means. Like, he fit in seamlessly. He filled a very important spot that I feel like a lot of us knew was there, a gap there where we needed a different type of fullback to step in on the left and even maybe on the right as well. And so he is going to be so important coming back. Again, I don't expect him to play any particular role soon, but we just know that he's back in the fold, which is great, so it's really nice to see him. And, you know, like, hopefully we get to see him sooner rather than later. I was just seeing there was other players as well. I did see Thomas Partey in there. I saw Thomas Partey in there. I saw Jesus. Those are the main ones. Thomas Partey is in there. You can see him there in the picture here. Oh no, let's see if we can just, Timber. Well, lots of Timber. Yeah, Partey is back there. Oh wow, Raya. Okay. I'm just trying to see. I don't see the one I don't see is Zinni. And I don't see Tommy either. But I have a feeling that at least one of them is at least in and around it, which we need. So yeah, we have players back, which is great. And so hopefully they can play a role on Monday. That's why I'm kind of glad that the game is not until Monday. It gives them more time to train and like to get fit to go, because I would love to see like almost everybody make it for Sheffield. Is the players that are in the training. So Jesus, Thomas Partey, and might be Timber, but at least one of Zinchenko or Tommy, if not both. So I'm loving it. Nuances of Fate says Arsenal just released his comeback video. I am so gassed. Like, I cannot wait to watch this. I just don't know how somebody can play for 5 seconds and just be so loved. Donkey says no. Tomiyasu, didn't see him, but something is going on with Tommy. I just, in the gut, I'm feeling like in my gut, I'm feeling like it's not just like anything normal. So let's see. Natalie says Jesus super sub, stay Trossard, Havertz false 9. Says probably end of March for Yuri and Timber. Mafia Boss says Timber should be ready for the Man City game. Social Join says leave Timber until May games, 5 to 10 minutes max. Boy says Timber passed the eye test in 1.5 competitive games. That's just what, like, honestly, you guys, like, when he first got injured, I watched the Community Shield like at least 3 times. like back on YouTube just to watch him play again. And I watched that Barcelona game a couple of times too because I just like he just like Boy is saying like he passed the eye test, like you could just tell like, and he hadn't fully adapted to what we're doing. Like remember like when Rice first got in the team, it was like a little clunky, you know, he was like a little like, okay, like we know you're good, but like, yeah, we know you need some time. Like Timber was better than Rice coming straight in. So just imagine where he'd be now if he hadn't got the ACL. So I'm super gassed for him to be back in the fold for sure. Blaze says, just where's Tomiyasu? I did not see him, but just because he's not in the pictures doesn't mean that they're not there. Arsenal love a mind game. You know, they love to keep things hidden. So just because Tomiyasu and Zinchenko are not there I don't think that 100% means that they won't be ready to play against Sheffield. It's only Wednesday, which is crazy because I thought today was Tuesday the whole day. This whole day I thought it was Tuesday. But it's only Wednesday, so, you know, you still have Thursday and Friday, I guess, so let's see what happens. Foxy says, "Good to see Timber back. Never want to see players get long-term injuries like that, regardless who they play for." I think it was, like, it was really jarring just because in the Emirates, because I was there, like, you just knew it was bad, like, when he went down. It was just so ominous and quiet, and it's just like, you just know when a player goes down, it's a long one, so, um, yeah, and you don't wanna see players go down with long-term injuries because they're people, and, you know, you wanna see you don't ever wanna see players get injured, like that. Keenan says draining the knee with Jesus is a serious issue as well. Hyphy says, "My boy Timber was cooking against Forest and he had that injury. Good news is that he's back." Chris Frazier says, "Yeah, something's not right with Tommy. Played every game for Japan, arrived back in London, MIA." Social Join says, "No, Timber played preseason and he just fitted in. He only needs a few games and the system will be easy for him." Mr. Happy says, "Timber is class. Appeared that he didn't have any weaknesses." I'm sure he does, and we would have noticed them by now, but I feel like he's such a top quality player that he's gonna be so good for us. Like, you could just feel it. See, Walter says, "I'm nervous about Timber. There's an incredible amount of expectation in him." There is a lot of expectation, but you're never better than when you're injured. And I think, you know, people have to keep that in mind. But we also did see a couple of games, and I think we were I was very impressed with what I saw. So I'm not too worried about it. But like the Arsenal perspective is saying Ajax to Arsenal is a natural progressive move. He is not like coming from West Ham. Like, I'm not trying to like diss Rice. Obviously, you guys know I love him to death. But, you know, going from Moyes to Arteta is very like stark, you know, but growing up in the Ajax system, you're going to understand the way that we play, I think, a lot easier, you know. So I'm not that worried about him. I just feel like people need to not have high expectations about what role he's going to play this season. I feel like we should be grateful for anything that we get and not have expectations of him coming back like next month and starting games, you know, because we can be a little aggressive and impatient when players were desperate to see them. And it's like, yeah, but wouldn't you rather him be good for next season? Like, I'm more wanting him to just like kind of play a small role and like, you know, the re-injury or like muscle injuries after an ACL are quite common. And so my expectations are very low. And I feel like everybody's expectations should be very low. But knowing Arsenal fans, they'll expect him to be starting against Sheffield because they saw him in training. You know, so there's that. Super Kai says, "I can't wait for next season to see fully fit, flowing Timber. Was excited and itching for him more than Rice at the time. Love perfect defender signings, especially since we are starved for so long, especially because our defenders are so important to everything that we do that like our defensive signings do end up being, I think, more important than others. You know, under Arsene Wenger, it was like a defender could be anybody. You could have thrown me back there and it wouldn't have mattered that much. But the way that Arteta plays, it's very dependent on the base and the foundation at the back. And so we know that Timber being there is going to make a difference. It's not just like having any old buddy back there. Chris says, "Honestly, Timber gives off super positive vibes. He's a proper player. I don't doubt he'll be a great player for us." Keenan says, "Speaking about Ajax, Jarrell Hato is bananas. We need to keep that pipeline going." Do you guys think we need Jarrell Hato? Like, now that Kivior's, like, here's my thought process is that we, I think we need a center back more than we need a left center back, because we have like 4 or 5 players that can play left-sided center back, left back. And now that Kivior is playing better, I don't know if there's like a real need to bring in another one. But what we don't have is someone that can step in and do what Saliba and Gabriel do. You know, we can pretend like putting Ben White or Kivior back there is going to be the same, but we know it's not. We've seen it. We've seen Ben White and Saliba earlier this season, and we've seen Kivior and Gabriel, and it just felt very shaky. And I think it's because, like, physically, pace, 1v1 defending, all that type of stuff, those guys are not the same. And so, personally, if I had to choose for like the type of defender, I would choose a center back. I would go and spend the money on a Diamande or something like that, to make sure that if something were to happen to Saliba or Gabriel, nothing would change. Whereas, like, with Kivior now starting to look like he's adapting and playing much better, having Zinchenko here, having Timber coming back, having Tommy, you have like a lot of players that can play in that position. And it just feels a little bit like overkill, when we literally, if Saliba went down, we'd be so fucked, you know? So, I'm not sure if like Hato is like a have to. It's more of like a, if Kivior were not able to adapt, then you know, you move him on or you loan him out and you bring in Hato. But now that Kivior is starting to look like he can do the job, I'm probably more leaning towards center back, even though I know that missing out on Hato would hurt because he's obviously going to be a fantastic player and he'll end up in the Premier League. You know, I feel like the other team that probably would look at him is like Liverpool, you know. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I'm at. Let's see. Natalie says Timber back Champions League. Probably like in a month and some change. He'll probably be ready to like be in a squad, which would be great. Boy says we need Hato. Trini Gunner says, next season, what's that? We are in a race for 2 major titles now. Well, I mean, next season is important for Timber. You know, I'm not going to put any expectation on him this season. I don't think we should rush him in because we have 2 titles on offer, because he's just come back from an ACL, you know, so that was the context in terms of next season. Obviously, this season is important. Keenan says, yeah, we probably need a center back if Kivior is going to keep playing left back. Marco says, with Cedric gone, we need another defender. Mr. Happy says, Timber is a right-sided center back. I think he's a right back / left back in our system, though. Just like it's kind of the same as Ben White. Ben White was, you know, a center back in a back 3, and so naturally in our system, you're a fullback. You're not really like Gabriel and Saliba because the requirements for those positions are so like physically demanding that I don't think Ben White or Kivior could do it in a long period of time. Because even as like a fullback under Mikel Arteta, you naturally have to slim down, and center backs are heavier, stronger, bigger, you know. So I feel a little bit like, even though Timber is a right-sided center back, so technically he could play Saliba's role. Do you want to see him there? You know, because the value around Saliba and Gabriel is that they're both like 6'4" monsters that can defend in wide areas and head the ball out and, you know, really dominate space. That's not really what Timber can do because he's a right-sided center back in a 3. And so in Arsenal system, he's a fullback, and that's fine, you know. So I don't necessarily see him as a right-sided center back. I don't see him as a natural player to step in for Saliba. I just don't, because the requirements at Arsenal are different. But that's just how I think of things. You know, other people think of things differently. Let's see. Chris Frazier says, I agree with you on that, Jess. I'd still take Hato, though, if I'm being greedy. If I'm being greedy, of course. If I'm being greedy, absolutely. I'm just thinking, I don't really want to see a lot of resources, you know, attributed to the defense. I expect us to buy at least 1 defender, but if we have to buy 1, it needs to be in a position that we just have no like for like coverage in. And right now that's more of the center backs than the fullbacks. In the fullback positions, we can chop and change and move things around and pretty much look the same, whether it's Zinchenko and White or Timber and Tommy or, you know, Kivior and White. You can chop and change, but we can't chop and change our center backs. We cannot, you know. So if we have to spend money on the defense, I feel like that's the most important thing, even though, like, of course, if I'm greedy, I want Hato as well. Um, so yeah. Let's see. John P says, I think Hato will stay at Ajax for a couple of years. He is still a baby. Yeah, I mean, he is, but like his experience level is not that of a player of his age. So, I still feel like we may go for him, but I just don't know if, like, that makes the most sense when we look at where the team is lightest at. But I hear you. Let's see. Keenan says we definitely need a center back that can cover Gabriel and Saliba and keep the levels. Diamande is definitely priority. This is what I'm saying. Like, Hato is the hot thing on the market. He looks good on comps. He's young and all this kind of stuff. But when you really think about where we need cover, we might just have to let that one ride. Because center back slash just somebody that can do Saliba and Gabriel's job, we don't have that. I think a long period of time with either Kiwi or Ben White at center back is drop points just because it's not the same. Think about the beginning of the season when we have Ben White and Saliba at center back, it just didn't work. And even Kiwior and Gabriel, it was better than Rob Holding and Gabriel, but it still wasn't quite what we need, So our system is very much so built around having two monsters at center back, very much, So I think we need another one. And it will cost money to get him. It will cost money to get him, Diamande. And I know that, like, people don't want to necessarily spend a lot of money, but if you're gonna spend money at defense in defense, at least spend it on the right profile. Hato also probably looks more attractive because you'll probably only you spend half of what you'd spend for Diamande. I get that too. Let's see. Trini says, "Hey Jess, if you were ESR's sister, what would you advise him to do? Stay at Arsenal or leave in the summer?" Oh, leave in the summer. Leave in the summer. I just feel as though, like, he's like 24 now, or 23, 24 almost. Like, it's so funny because he's like basically he's 1 year younger than Kai Havertz. Like, he's genuinely not that young. But we still act as though he's 20 breaking into the team. And I know he's lost a lot of time. Dealing with injuries, but he's going to lose more time on our bench. So I do think that his future is elsewhere, and that's not, nice to hear or say because he's Arsenal through and through and he's a Highlander. But like we've seen with Willock, it actually feels good to move these academy players on for good profit, because as long as you replace and, recruit properly, you can be happy that they went somewhere else and you got the money and it works out for everybody. So I definitely sell him. And I definitely tell him to start thinking about yourself. Yeah, I think it's strange that Reece Nelson and Emil and Eddie are so desperate to stay. But I also think that, like, with Eddie and Reece Nelson, it's a little bit different because they've both gotten good contracts that they probably won't get somewhere else. Like, Eddie is not getting 100,000 pounds per week somewhere else, so there's definitely that. Blaze says ESR will be 24 in the summer. Super Kai says, we have been so lucky that we haven't lost Saliba, Gabby, or Rice for long periods or at all this season. So far as we would be screwed, definitely the areas that we need to cover, quality ones. Keenan says, ESR looks so damn good recently. We need to sell him to Spain or something. John P says, Kai is younger than Eddie. He is younger than Eddie. And that's my thing. It's like, it's not like they're not young anymore. They're very much so, like, they've played in European competitions. They've been in multiple, first team setups. Like, they've been around for a while, these guys, Reece, ESR, and Nketiah. And I think, they all probably should go in the summer. I don't think all of them will because, homegrown and stuff like that. But the two that would get you the most are Eddie and ESR. And so those are the two that I probably like look to sell. But it's not because, like, I hate them or anything. It's just like, at a certain point, like, they become like their value just diminishes. I feel like when you're like 26 and you're a squad guy that hasn't really broken through, you're a lot less attractive to the teams like Villa and Wolves and shit than, a 23-year-old ESR, you know? Um, so yeah, Mr. says ESR was right guy when we were finishing outside of the top four, and now we're pushing for trophies. We need better. Nicholas says Saliba's backup is Rice for this season. Diamande or random shout for Gazurowski next season. What happened to all the Fresneda interest? Fresneda, when he went to Sporting, I don't know really what happened to him after that, but we bought Timber, and I'm just like totally happy with that. I know that he had an unfortunate injury, but I'm totally happy with the choice of getting Timber. It came out of nowhere. And, when talking about Fresnedas and shit and you end up with Timber, you really did, you got the better option. So Fresneda went to Sporting and nobody talks about him anymore. And I don't know why. Keenan says on Mudryk, Trossard is solid at false nine and left center mid. I think we can use both in the same team. Yeah, I think Arsenal are very flexible in their like transfer approach where we can bring in players with two completely different profiles and still do well because I think Arteta always wants multiple profiles that can play in the same position. And that's why we could have probably brought in Vlahovic and still been okay, but we ended up bringing in Gabriel Jesus and it still worked because in Arteta's mind, there probably was always a plan to have a false nine and a clinical striker. So you just modify things in that way. Like, I think that's the best way to be anyway, because you never know what the market is going to be. If you're hell bent on getting like a clinical number nine, but there's not one available, you'd probably rather wait. So go for another thing that's on the list than just not get it at all or get somebody that is not good enough, if that makes sense. So, I'm not surprised that we were able to get Trossard and it work out for us because they probably always wanted a very versatile forward option that could play across the front three and midfield. But you still need to buy the winger. And so now we've arrived at this next window in the summer, and it's very much so still on the menu. And we have some good options to look at, which is nice, So timing is key, opportunity is key. I think being flexible as well is so key because if you have to buy this player, but they're not available on the market, but you can't maneuver, I do think that maybe you don't have the best transfer strategy. So I'm not really that surprised that like Trossard was gonna work for us. He fills a really important role, which is like a high quality squad guy that can cover multiple positions. But yeah, we all know that we still need that pacey 1v1 demon. And I feel like we'll get him. Adam says, how come Liverpool and Barcelona are blooding loads of youngsters, but Arsenal can't do even one? I feel like it's a combination of things. I think it's the fact that like we're already a very young team. So, making young players like responsible for other young players, I feel like is hard. I also think that like people don't think of context and circumstances. Like Liverpool have blooded in youngsters during a time where they're in a massive injury problem as well. So, Klopp, value like isn't value, but he trusted the youth in a situation where I think he was playing for penalties. Like I think people think that like Klopp was like desperate to play them. Had any of his like they have like 11 first team players out. So, they wouldn't have played in that game had those guys been fit. So, have Arsenal been in a situation yet this season where there actually wasn't any other option but to play the kids? We probably got close to it once, but it was not really as dire as it was for them. And, I kind of get what you guys are saying about blooding in the youth and all that kind of stuff and how important it is. I don't believe that it's something that we just absolutely cannot do. I think there were opportunities like when we're up against Lons, when we're in the dead rubber against PSV. But I think in general, for a team that already is like the third youngest in the league, that's not really dealing with like an injury crisis like some of our contemporaries, I don't necessarily feel like, we need to be that worried about it. I think um, there was opportunities to do it that weren't taken, which I kind of understand more, but like you have to like it wasn't like like Klopp had a full team of first teamers and he just happened to put the youth in because he just loved the youth so much. Like they wouldn't even been anywhere near that team if he didn't. They like Liverpool are literally at bare bones. So context is key. I feel like it's kind of being a stick. It's kind of a stick to beat Mykhailo with now because we always need something to be upset by. I understand, you know, like speaking about it and asking questions about it, but being genuinely upset by it, I feel like is strange when you think about the context in which our contemporaries are using these youth. I didn't really understand it when we played against PSV and when we against Lens. I didn't get it because I just felt like, these are games that one didn't matter and one we were like 6-0 up. But then he played Nweri against like West Ham or something like that, and we got to see him, and it's fine. So I kind of get it, but I also don't at the same time. I don't get the desperation, or like the level to which people are upset by it. I get like questioning it, but like the level of like anger is strange to me. Because it's not that important. Super Kai says the fringe players are at the age that they either are good enough to break into the first 11 or sold for profit. Hate to say it as I love Highland boys, but they aren't boys anymore. And I also feel like, when they were like the best Arsenal sides always had academy players in it, but if you broke into the first 11, you were probably a world-class player. And if you were a squad player, you were like a really good squad player, like always available, like came up with clutch goals, like somebody like Ray Parlour, for example. So you're either a Tony Adams or a Ray Parlour, and I don't think any one of those three fit in those categories. So it's time to sell, and that's fine. Chris says, buy Diamande, promote and integrate Walters. Defense is sorted. Spend the rest of the money higher up the pitch. Interesting thing is that like somebody that really watches the academy a lot, Diluted. Make sure you guys check out his channel and all that kind of stuff. But he said that Walters is like probably the most ready to step in, but probably would still struggle. And I think we also have to also admit that like there is a chance that maybe just because have outgrown the under 21s, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a gap between where they are now and where we need them to be in order to break through. And, I think when we were desperate last season, where we were, sitting faced with either Rob Holding or, playing like Walters, I still feel like we should have played Kivior and or Walters and did something different. But that doesn't mean that he wouldn't have struggled, you know? Um, but we also have to remember that, like, some of these players may not actually be as good as we project them to be, And Arsenal fans are incredibly unforgiving and unkind to players that don't play well right away. And so keep that in mind when you're asking for the likes of like Walters and Awari to play, that as young players, they're going to fuck up. And, I would just hate for them to be shitted on the way some of our other players have been, because like we're very unforgiving and we seem to forget that some players are like very young and, so I always keep that in mind too, that also with playing like a Walters or something is gonna come like some really like fucked up moments as a kid, because you make mistakes. Keenan says, who are we bringing in to compete with Rice? Partey will be gone in June. I'll be honest, I don't think Rice needs competition. I just feel like he needs somebody to back him up. So basically buying somebody that can play with him or play instead of him when he's not available is probably more what I would look at than compete. Nobody's going to compete with Rice. Like nobody's competing with Saka, Rice, Odegaard, like we're not finding anybody to really compete with those players. But somebody that can play with or instead of him is probably what we would look at. And so that's why I think we're looking at Zubamendi. RM says, do you think we need an explosive fullback, perhaps Frimpong with a 40 million release clause? I don't like him, and I don't really care for fullbacks that are only geared towards going forward. If we're going to buy a fullback that can go forward, I need them to be able to go in the other direction as well, like a complete fullback, and they're very expensive. And so I am actually okay with our fullback options right now. If Kivior comes good, I don't feel like in the way that we play, like we're desperate for an explosive winger. I feel like to me, it's not really like high or even on the list. But that's just me. I've never cared about explosive wingers. It's not my thing. I don't like the Bellerins. It just irks me, So I've always been more of like a Laurent Sonya girl than like a Bellerin girl, So I'm the wrong person to ask, because when I watch Frimpong play, all I can think about is him getting burned on the other side. And so it's just a no for me. But I know a lot of people want that explosive fullback. What I would say is, like, I would love to have somebody that's like a all around fullback that does everything, goes forward and goes back, but they're very expensive, and it's not a priority for me. John P says, Jess, how would you prioritize the money? Everyone is saying CB, 2 midfielders, winger, and a striker sounds like mega money. I would say 1 midfielder, 1 defender, a winger, and a striker. But like the priority is a striker, winger, the priority would be striker, midfielder, winger, defender. But you have to get the first 3. I would say, like, if we go through the window and we don't get a midfielder or we don't get a winger, I'm going to be spitting nails. Like, there's just no way that we go through that window and don't attack the positions that we just have left open for so long. Saka is due a breakdown, and and Martinelli has went through a large part of this season with being very, very poor, so whether that's Kai Havertz or not, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but it would have been so nice to have another winger available to us, while Martinelli's not going through a good time, because I think we've all accepted that Trossard is more of a central player. Midfield, something that should have been, looked at in the summer window. It was addressed with Kai Havertz. We all know that we need something else there. And so that has to get done, and then the striker has to get done. So if we miss out on anything, it should be the defender. But even that, I would be like very much so praying to the gods, that we get through the season, because we're all like, we just know that they're like, at some point, one of those players will break down at the back in our center backs. And so we need all of it, we need all of it. But 2 midfielders, it really depends on what happens with Jorginho and Partey, and whether or not we need 2. Like, if Jorginho stays, I feel like 1 midfielder would be enough with Rice, with Odegaard, with what we have. I know that, people want like a full rebuild, but we just have not even addressed the attack. And so 1 midfielder, I'd probably just be okay with that, because like you need to buy a striker, period. You have to. And a winger, you got to get those, so if it's just 1 midfielder, it's 1 midfielder. Because despite people not loving Havertz, we've won many games with him in the midfield and dominated most of those games. So I don't think he's like, it's so like we need 2 midfielders or we're gonna die. Like, I don't think it's that. I think I would love to get 2, but if we get 1, but it's like the person that's gonna play 90% of the games, I'm totally good with that. Because you're not gonna be able to get everything. Let's see. Who are we bringing into? Oh yeah, sorry, I answered that. Sorry. A couple more. Let's see. Let's see. Back of the net says, just tuned in. I might have missed it already. Who is your number 1 striker choice? Also, thoughts on Leao? Number 1 striker choice would be Osimhen, with an asterisk about just knowing that if we get Osimhen, you guys already know I'm going to bitch all the time about when he's injured. So just know that that's happening. My second choice would be Gyökeres. I just feel like he's a totally underrated option for some reason. And Leao for me is he's a very talented player, and when he shows it, it's amazing. But he goes through these patches where he doesn't, and people act like he doesn't go through those patches. I don't think he fits Arsenal, because he's not a hard worker off the ball, and everything about what we've done this season and everything that we've kind of like sacrificed at the beginning was to become the team that we are now, which we're now seeing the fruits of that labor, and to throw that away for him feels very strange and unlikely. So as much as I like Leao, I'm totally happy watching him play for other teams. I think the winger that we bring in needs to be able to fall in line with what we're doing now, and they need to work hard. So those are kind of my thoughts on those guys. D Brown, thank you so much for your super chat. Says Miles Lewis Skelly is Rice's backup in a few years. He does look good, doesn't he? Like, he looks like he could actually come through at some point. I'm not like totally sold on any of like the youngsters. Like we know for sure they're gonna make it. I think maybe Noweri is the closest one to like we're for sure he's gonna make it. But Miles Lewis Skelly has always been like very highly rated. And so I would love to see him, come through if he is good enough, and even if he isn't, like even just a squad player for a couple of years is fine because you serve the first team in multiple different ways. So I'm cool with that. Definitely cool with that. Brian Holiday, thank you so much for your super chat. Says unpopular opinion: Havertz has been a good signing for the money and should be Arsenal's starting striker until we buy a new striker in the summer. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, we get to this point where all of Havertz, Trossard, and Jesus are all fit and who people feel like should be starting, because I am starting to feel like we've played our best football with Havertz up front. But it also, like a week ago, I felt like it was Trossard because that's when we slapped up like West Ham or something like that. So, like before we played against Porto, I felt like Trossard was perfect at false nine, So every day it changes. So Havertz is definitely a good option there, which is great. Is he a good signing for the money? I think he's been a better signing than maybe people are willing to admit. But is he a good signing for the money? I feel like he showed a level of like a 30 million to 40 million pound signing, but 65 million, not sure he's made that level of an impact. I'll be honest with you, but I'm open to hopefully Havertz being able to make a bigger, more significant impact next season. Again, next season is also important, but a full season under his belt at Arsenal, learning the system, getting the Chelsea out of his mind and all that, a couple sessions of therapy, he might actually maybe go up a level, but who knows what we'll look like by then, because it's going to be interesting for Havertz next season as well, because he may be ready to go up a level, but we will have probably bought a striker and another midfielder by then. And I just don't see a world where if we get Arteta's long-term choice in Martin Zubimendi and we spend a shit ton on a striker, that Havertz is still going to be starting, So interesting days ahead for Havertz, but I agree with you that I feel like he's been probably better than what people are willing to admit. But for the money, I think we could have gotten a more transformative signing through the door. But thank you so much for your super chat. I think that's a really good point that, like, I think what you're ultimately what you're saying is that he hasn't been that bad. And I agree with you. I don't think he's been as bad as people have made him out to seem. So yeah. Arsenal Perspective says, I wouldn't be saying he is value for money just yet, but Havertz has been good recently. Exactly. That's what I think. Chris Fraser says MLS and Noweri are really exciting. They're two youths that you really want to see succeed with us. I like that. Elliot says, why does it look like Gyökeres will soon be Arsenal player? I don't know. I actually don't feel like Arsenal are going to buy Gyökeres. I just don't get that feeling. But I do think he should be on the list. Because anybody that scored 30 goals and has like 10 assists already this season, with like a quarter of it to go still, has to be somebody that we look at seriously. He's played in English football before, so you have like the whole, does he know how to play the, tough in a physical league? He has that. He's putting up numbers of a player that like truly knows where the goal is. He creates his own shot action. So he's not somebody that just only thrives for people giving him the ball. He actually does things on his own too. He's a great penalty taker. He's a good striker of the ball. He's a physical option. He links well with his players. He plays in a progressive system under Amorim. Like, he has a lot of good things. The only thing that I know is going to be like the biggest thing for people is, one, he doesn't have pace, which I understand. And then there's like another one of like Prem bias, where it's like, but just get the Prem player because that means that it's going to work out. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's Tony we're talking about. Like, that is not somebody that we should just be like putting in the basket and going to the checkout just yet. We should really be looking at other options. But I would love for Arsenal to look at him seriously. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to get him, but I would love for Arsenal to look at him seriously, because he's the only one out of the players that we've been linked to that's putting up serious numbers this season. Osimhen, I think, scored a hat trick today, but has been a little off his game. But also Napoli have been off their game, so take that in consideration. Tony's been out the whole season, basically, even though he's scoring now. Xerxes, we just looked, he has 9 goals and 3 assists. So like Isak is around that same vibe as well. And Vlahovic, I think, maybe is in double figures, but nobody's putting up numbers like him. So you have to look at him. You just have to. Even if he doesn't end up coming, you have to look at him. Because you just never know. You just never know if that's the guy. And he just reminds me so much of like Kane of old. And as much as I hate that guy, Harold can do one. I do feel like I want us to have a striker like Harry Kane. I hate saying it, but like that, somebody that's going to be very consistent, clinical, scary striker. And I know some people are saying that Gyökeres doesn't have any star quality or he doesn't scare the opposition. And I'm like, I think he does. I think somebody that, has a good strike of the ball, is like a true goal scorer, very clinical. I do think teams would be afraid of him. I think what they're not afraid of is they're either afraid of real clinical strikers that have the physical qualities and score loads of goals, or they're scared of people with pace. One of the two, and Osimhen kind of has both of those. So that's why he's always top of the tree, because he has the physical attributes to occupy center backs, but he also has like frightening pace too, which is crazy. He's maybe not as clinical as we would love him to be, but in Arsenal's system where we create loads of chances, he's gonna score 20 goals. Like he just is. Whether or not he's on the pitch though, that's like a whole nother thing. Let's see. The Arsenal perspective says Harry Kane for 3 years would bank for Arsenal. Fire FNAF says, I agree. Arteta sign him up for another 12 months. Hashtag Jorginho. Lexus says, why not Gyökeres? If they're willing to go for Tony, Gyökeres would make a lot of sense. I still think that there's just like a real like fear of buying somebody from a non-top 5 league. Like people are afraid to buy players from the other top 5 leagues. So think about somebody outside of top 5 leagues. Portugal that league is not rated by a lot of people. And it's true. Like there are strikers that have come out of that league that had loads of fun in it and didn't necessarily translate the way that it should have. But, I just have a feeling that this guy is going to be fucking brilliant. Like I feel like he just has it, like, but he also has a cool celebration. And that's important to me. So yeah. Let's see. Says, plus we need an attacking duo like KDB and Holland. Keenan says, Vlahovic is banging goals right now. I feel like he's the closest striker to a Harry Kane. I feel like Gyökeres is in that same category. But again, if you look at it from a league perspective, I guess you would say like, because Vlahovic plays in a top 5 league, then that makes he's like closer to what we'd be looking for. But I actually think like when you watch Gyökeres play, like it's not just because he's blonde, he literally reminds me of Harry Kane, literally. Style, everything, the way he strikes the ball, the way he's always in the right place at the right time. He capitalizes on defenders' mistakes, but he also creates his own actions. He's a good dribbler of the ball. He links well with his teammates. The Vlahovic Gyökeres mold, I feel like, is a very attractive option for Arsenal, but that has to be accompanied by a very fast winger. I have to say that over and over again because I think we need more speed in our front lines. So yeah, I love it. Blaze says, honestly, I don't understand some Arsenal fans' obsession with Tony. Me neither. I don't get it, but it's for me, it's not about him being English. Like I actually don't care about it being like an English thing. It's not about it being like other players being more exotic, like, or anything like that. It's I genuinely watch him and I think there's a clear ceiling on him that's not going to be an Arsenal quality ceiling. It's not like if we didn't have Jesus, Tony would be a fantastic backup for Arsenal. Fantastic, but you would still need to buy a player that could reach another level, I feel. So Tony for like 45 million or something like that is like a good like senior backup for us, like would be phenomenal. But as the guy and Jesus is the backup, it's really giving underwhelming. It's giving 2 Lacazettes, and that's just not what Arsenal need. in my opinion. Marco says, Jess, you're not concerned about Gyökeres' heavy touch. I don't need a silky player, but his touch is really heavy. I don't know if I think his touch is as heavy as you, but it's not stopping him from scoring goals, you know? So, I'm also like I'm not that concerned about somebody that's not like Gabriel Jesus. Like again, like you're saying, I don't need a silky player, but when you look at all the strikers that are like natural strikers, I've seen Vlahovic take heavy touches. I've seen freaking uh Osipman take heavy touches as well. The players that don't take them as much are like the Xerxes and the Isaks, you know, because they're more technical footballers, you know. So I'll take that if I'm getting the goals. Like I'm really not that concerned about a number 9 that has a silky touch or anything like that. And as long as that heavy touch is not keeping you from scoring goals, I'm kind of okay with it, you know. So, but I haven't seen the heavy touches that you're talking about, but there I'm sure that they're there because you're saying that they're there, which is fair enough, you know? Keenan says, "After Darwin, I just don't trust strikers from the Portuguese league." But I actually rate Darwin Nunez. I feel like, you know, it all a lot of it has to depends on, like, people feel like everybody that comes from the Portuguese league is gonna be like Darwin Nunez, and people have convinced themselves, like, Darwin Nunez is a flop, and I'm just like, I don't think he is. I think he's incredibly unlucky to hit the post as many times as he does, but he's genuinely like a very like, you know, he has all those attributes that a striker that's actually going to score lots of goals and create chaos is he just has it, you know. So he takes wild shots and does stupid shit here and there, but I still feel like give Darwin Nunez like a year or two and he's just going to be something else. Um, I actually rate Darwin Nunez, and I've stood 10 toes down from the beginning since they first bought him that, like, that's a player that we could have probably went after and probably used because we don't create enough chaos in attacking positions sometimes it's too neat, and I think what Darwin does is, like, his pace, his aggression, you know, the fact that he's willing to take early shots, those things scare the defense, so, no, he's not always the cleanest and he does stupid shit, but for a player that people think is like a full-on flop, um, let's actually look at his numbers because he's in double figures for both, is he not? Um, so in 24 games, he has 9 goals and 7 assists. Um, he's underperforming his XG right now. And then he has like 2 goals and 1 assist. So yeah, and he's what? He's 24. So yeah, let's see what he's like in like 2 years or something like that. But I actually rate him and I think he's a good player. I think also like the price tag has really, like, hurt the ability to analyze him properly because people genuinely are like, "Well, you spent, like, 100,000,000 on him," and he was more like 68,000,000 or something like that, which is still a lot, but I feel like and also, like, Man United fans were so upset that they lost out on him, so they started this campaign that he's, like, this real shit player, and I'm just like, I don't know, I watched with my eyes, and I feel like he always has the ability to turn the game on its head. Whether he does it or not is usually based on whether or not he hits the post, but, like, I think he's a quality player. So that's why I'm not necessarily as, like, thing about the Portuguese league as other people, but that's just me. You know, that's just me. I like the player. I like him. Um, so yeah. Marco says, "Hit the likes, people." Yeah, you guys make sure you guys hit the likes. Keenan, I'm going to answer your question. Why don't people rate Mbomo? I rate Mbomo very highly. I love Brentford. I love Thomas Frank. I like what they've done. I don't like Tony for us, but I like Tony as a player. Like I think he's exactly where he should be. But Mbomo is really what they're missing right now because Tony needs somebody to pass the ball to. And I think, you know, and Bomo could play for a top 6 or like top 8 club. I think he should be playing in Europe. I think he has a lot of quality. And I'm sad that he got that injury. So yeah, I actually rate him. So yeah. Shamaria says I will be on Gyökeres watch tomorrow when Sporting play Benfica. Yeah. Yeah. Let's watch him. Let's watch him. So yeah, but you guys, make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on the way out. I have things to do. It's 2:00 here in Los Angeles, and I still have other stuff to do, but I wanted to do a longer stream today because the rest of the week is just going to be crazy. I don't know when I'm going to be able to come back. So just work with me. But this was such a fun stream. I really enjoyed it. I love the longer ones where we just get to sit and talk. So let me know in the comment section after if you guys like the stream as well and what you guys thought about all the things that we talked about. Again, make sure you guys smash the likes. It's a free way to support the channel. Subscribe as well if you guys like the content. And I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.